Is that you, Kate?
Hey,
Hey,
yeah, that's me.
hey, well, good morning and happy Friday. Hope everybody's doing well and your families are doing well. Welcome to the CX community session for the Americas led by Arquette Global. Look forward to a great conversation this morning. My name's Marlan Hardie. I'm Chief Customer Experience Officer for Worldwide Technology. I'll be the host this morning. Before we jump in and introduce our panelists, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Rich Kennedy, co-founder of Arquette Global, to tell you a little bit about the awards. Rich?
Thank you, Martin, and welcome everybody. Great to see so many familiar faces as always. Unfortunately, he's stuck with me today because Mark's got the flu, so he would have loved to have been here, but unfortunately he's wrapped up in a blanket somewhere sweating, so hopefully he's better by the end of the weekend. So this is just a part of the Customer Centricity World Series, which is coming up in May, and the entries are now open. So if you have a great story to tell, if your clients have great stories to tell, you can follow that link and register your interest for entering as well. So yeah, I won't take up any of your time because I know that we have plenty to get through today. We've had a great conversation already about what we're going to be speaking about. So Marlon, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Rich. Well, we have a panelist discussion today and joined by two very familiar and popular faces in the industry. I'm joined by Miss Diane Magers, who is the founder and Chief Experience Officer at Experience Catalyst, as well as Michelle Brigman, who's the Senior Director at Medallia. Diane, Michelle, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope you both are doing well.
Doing great.
Well, we have you on a panel this morning to talk about a subject that I am just, you guys know, if you know anything about me, it gets me super excited. We talk a lot about customer experience, but I think we all agree that the employee is just as important if we're going to deliver that experience. And so as we jump in this morning, just would like to encourage the audience. This is not just me, Michelle, and Diane. Speak up. Tell us what's working for you, what you're thinking about. Give us, challenge us, and give us your input. You know, research is showing, as we look at some statistics, when we think about the employee, research is showing us that people who have reported a positive employee experience have literally almost up to 16 times the engagement level of employees with a negative experience, and that they are 8 times more likely to want to stay at a company. That's straight from McKinsey. Another McKinsey Global Institute report shows that the future state of work is going to bring in even more work from home. We're home now. Most of us are remote, but get used to it because it's the way of the future. And it's going to accelerate e-commerce and digital payments. And there's a continued rollout of automation and AI that's going to change the way we do work and how our employees serve our customers from home. And at the same time, the pandemic has kind of opened this door to a wider range of workplace changes that we call the new possible. And so studies are showing that this is something we're all dealing with, whether we're practitioners or company owners. And I'd like to kind of just open it up to the floor. And, you know, as we look at 2022, Diane and Michelle, what are your thoughts about things to come for the future? How are we planning out 2022 and what are you seeing out in the industry?
Diane, you want to take it first?
Yeah. I believe that we've finally shifted. We've been talking about this for years, but I think we've finally shifted to really defining and designing what we want that employee experience to be. I think a lot of people resonate with this when I say kind of it's beyond the bagels, meaning it's been great to have these perks and things that employees want and making, you know, building a few things. But what we really are finding is that employees are looking for new skills and new ways of learning and new ways to contribute. And we're going to talk about some of those examples like entrepreneurship, making sure we're taking that desire to create and that is a desire to be on their own, which is why we see the Great Resignation happening, really taking the experience and thinking about what does that employee need, not just to do their work, but in their lives, that's going to be rewarding. So when they come into work, they're contributing not only to the success of the brand, but also to themselves. So we're seeing a huge shift there. Michelle, you had a couple of examples.
Well, sure. Well, I want to add a couple of things to what you just shared, because I think it's been fascinating. If you think about with the pandemic, the work itself, so you can say I work in XYZ department, but how the work, the tactics that you were doing changed completely. Things had to become more digital. The behaviors that you typically exhibited were now something very different. And a lot of us, most of us, frankly, were kind of caught ill prepared for that. So thinking about how companies need to redefine what a job in, say, marketing, sales, customer support actually looks like, and sort of peeling back the layers of what are the actual tactics, behaviors, skills that you need in order to pull us into the work of the future, I think is going to be critically important, because it's not just redefining the job title, it's redefining the type of work. And so I think that's critically important. And I think the other thing, just to hit on what Marlan had kicked us off, and Diane, what you shared, is more so than ever, this is where people need to feel valued as an individual. So I know you said bagels in the break room, right? It's the, how am I personally being invested in? And do I feel like the work I do matters and is purposeful? And then do I feel like my employer and my team members care about me as an individual? And as Marlan shared, you get those things dialed in right, then you're talking about significantly more engagement from your employees, and you're talking about lower costs of managing your people and HR and human resources. So I think that this is just a very timely topic.
Totally agree.
I love that thought. And it looks like Anastasia's chiming in on the valued customer, something I picked up on too. As employees are coming home, employees that used to be customer facing in retail stores, they're struggling with, hey, I can't touch and interact with people like I used to. Am I as valued sitting behind a desk? As you guys are working in the industry, how are you seeing technology help keep the employee feeling valued or keep them connected to the customers? Anybody struggled with that or found that to be true as well?
And Anastasia, have something to say about that?
Yeah.
If she does, she's on mute. I saw her come off mute.
Did you ask for a comment? Okay, I wasn't prepared for that, Diane. You volunteered
No,
me, huh?
I thought you started to talk. So it's like, this is
Oh,
a discussion, not a panel. Yeah.
Yeah, we're friends here. We want to talk about what's really going on.
Well, actually, I would love myself to hear what you guys are doing in terms of technology that helps you to keep that motivation, because I'm more of a, camera to camera person. So I'm more when we have those conversations with people, not belly to belly, but on camera. So yeah, that'd be interesting to know how you guys are doing it with the technology, because to me, it could create the feeling of we are trying to keep you engaged, but not so much. Do you know what I mean? Like the technology kind of helps, but it doesn't help. So I really want to know from you, how are you utilizing it so that they really feel valued? Yeah.
Well, I know, and so such a great point. It goes back, I think, to Anastasia, the idea of so many of us, we took that annual employee survey and you kind of did it with rolling your eyes going, okay, I'm gonna answer these questions, but either they're never going to change or they just do this to make themselves feel better. Certainly have been on the receiving end of that, just as a practitioner, which is where I spent the majority of my career. And I know, just speaking on, now I sit on the other side of the table with from a technology provider with Medallia. And as CX practitioners, right, we did so much work to take the time to ask how our customers were feeling, capturing all these different signals about their behaviors in order to evaluate, is what they say aligning to what they do? And then how do we figure out where we need to step in, right, and change a behavior, do something different to more personalize that experience? And now really, like with what we're doing, is applying all of that great knowledge that, has been working with customer to employees. So getting away from that once a year kind of pointless feedback loop to the always on, with infrastructure in place with the company to actually take action. So you hear those same things around closed loop. What's the journey of the team member? What are points in time that matter? You know, if you get a new manager, how does that affect your overall loyalty and engagement with the company? Because as we've all experienced, we know our managers can have a huge impact on our satisfaction and engagement within our company. So being able to catch those things before you completely lose a particular customer, or a particular employee, right? So just applying a lot of that always on, real time, actionable alerting triggers so that companies can drive change in order to really build a strong, meaningful relationship with the employee that matters to them versus the one size fits all.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, and I think coming off the always listening is what you mean by kind of turning that lens of what we do with customers on employees. It's the same thing when we think about designing that experience. So one of the things that we know is that employees want to they want to contribute to product development. They want to contribute to different services that are being developed. So having them come in and being a part, regardless of their role, be a part of those design sessions. But also to your point, Michelle, there's a company to be unnamed, but they took that feedback of, I would like to know more about X topic. And they actually assign internal mentees so that every person who says, I want to learn more about digital, I want to learn more about tech or data analytics or customer data platforms, whatever it is, that they find somebody that can be that mentor. And what they found is that that mentorship relationship goes both ways, that the mentor and the mentee both feel like they're getting value, they're learning things they didn't know before, and it gives you a stronger support system for that employee rather than it just being a manager. So I think we have to think broadly about how we're engaging differently with leadership, not just having them come to the workshop, but what are we doing systemically to make sure that they feel supported? So I thought it was a fabulous idea about, you got people there who want to learn different parts of the organization. And by the way, we need generalists more than ever now, right? Because everything's becoming more fluid, and you have to understand when you're creating experience tech and everything that goes into it. So that's a great example, I think, of how they're thinking outside the box.
Well, and I know that with some of my teams and practice that worked really well was sitting down with the so for as a like a real life example, right? I had a customer care organization, and they just, as many of our customer care organizations, they're sort of the redheaded stepchild that sets apart, and they don't have many visitors coming by to check in. You know, they're there to explain away whenever something goes wrong, but not really active participants in the planning and earlier pieces of the cycle. And I remember the team was just, their morale was really low. And so we did a whiteboard exercise where it was, what do you want to be known for? And what do you want this team to be known for? And the group just sort of brainstormed and whiteboarded out a lot of different descriptors to say, this is what I want to be known for. This would make me feel valued. And so we sort of broke down, well, then what behaviors would lead people to perceive you that way? And are you doing those behaviors? Are you getting up from your desk or reaching out on Zoom to a key stakeholder and sharing a valuable insight? Because it's great that we have all of this, information about customer and purchase, but if you're sitting on it and you're keeping it in your little circle, it's not doing the organization any good. So instead of waiting for someone to come ask, hey, what happened with that marketing, product launch or whatever, why not take that and bring it forward to them? Hey, did you know that when you did this launch, here are some things that came out of it that would make your future launch even more successful? Now you're showing up and you're representing those things you want to be known for. And that is a really simple practice that you can do and revisit on a quarterly basis to say, how do we feel we're doing? Are we feeling better? What are our stakeholders saying? So that's just something I'd share with you as an idea around really starting to get more engagement from your employees and getting folks, bought in to the mission.
That's a
I
great
think
thought.
I think that's about too, when you think about the bigger mission now. I was reading a recent article, and I'll find it and send it, that 41% of CEOs, I think it was 41% of CEOs say the social problems that we have should be a part of their core business strategy. And they're making it part of that. Now, what a great opportunity to be able to engage your employees in something completely different. That if your organization is going to be doing something for the greater good, your employees are looking to contribute, right? Everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference, and everybody's frustrated that as an individual, they can't. But being part of that larger machine, so to speak, and having that contribution and starting to recognize that is important. I think the same article said like 64% of, at least in the US, we say that a company whose primary purpose should actually be making the world a better place. I mean, that sounds very Pollyannish, but in a lot of ways, our expectations about brands, not just products and services, but who they are and how they're contributing to the greater good and solving some of these problems, is becoming higher and higher. I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking for those brands that are doing that. And I think employees will start gravitating that way too. So I think that's another opportunity for people to contribute.
I think that's a good call out, Diane. And it's not only just about the ones that are going to make a difference, but it's also the ones that embrace it inside their culture. That's a big piece right there. I think that really will make a difference.
Yeah. You feel like you're part of that, but you feel like you're a bigger part of the cog, not just a cog in the wheel, but you're a bigger part of the machine. Yeah.
Diane and Jake, is something you said there that influences me. And granted, for those of you that have watched Succession, I'm in the midst of watching that. So I'm unduly influenced by the evil corporate world of Succession. But I think what you're describing, there's some risk in there as well, because you said, and I forget the percentage, say that they want their company to achieve a higher good or those sorts of things. But if you're just putting out fluffernutter and there's not the action under it, then I think you'll have the opposite effect, as opposed to if you had said nothing from your employee engagement. I think there's a natural cynicism, and again, unduly influenced by Succession, but there's a natural cynicism across an employee base of, oh yeah, we've heard that before. That's nice, but it's the action part of it that I think will be so important to the real employee engagement. You might get the sugar high of a nice town hall, but the actual engagement that comes afterward, the real protein, comes from the action.
Yeah. And I know, Rick, what some of the things I've seen that have worked really well has been taking the idea, all of the ideas and suggestions, and then there's, whether it's a monthly or quarterly, whatever the frequency is within the organization in terms of sort of that town hall or whatever the format, but bringing up and saying, we had 220 ideas. We vetted them. There are 25 that are really great. Here's what they are. And here's the timeline and what we're doing, and starting to just communicate, because even if you're making those changes, but you're not sharing it broadly, then people don't get that feeling of like, all right, I'm being listened to. So I think both the action and the communication and follow up is really what makes that system work.
And there's degrees of that, right? There is the town hall. Look at this monster idea that has come out, and it's spectacular. But there's also the degrees, right? You can't do that for every idea, but assuming that every idea has merit, maybe that's not entirely true. But then what are you doing on a more smaller basis? And what are you doing to acknowledge those ideas that have come in? So completely agree, Michelle, the communication is there. And it's that spectrum and that range of what that communication looks like that will make it effective across the entire employee base.
And I know with even my team, we basically repurposed a Kanban board to show progress and action and closure, and that was something that, whether it was digital or physically on the wall, because we've done both, people felt really good because they could see the progress, right? And they had the ability to go move that card from, to be done or idea to actually completed. And that was a very gratifying experience as well. That's just another very tangible tactic that you could use within your own organization.
Yeah, and all too often, everything we're talking about, people hand off to HR. And that's not their responsibility solely, right? It's very much like the CX organization and the strategy there. It's C-level down. It's everyone's involved. It's everybody's responsibility to train, cross-train. Diane, back to your point, making people feel engaged, having mentors in the business. There's got to be a program, but it's not just HR's responsibility. Diane, I think you have actually a slide prepared to talk around some of these stats. And do you want to walk us through that, or maybe the board exercise you had prepared?
Yeah, I did. I think it's stimulating some conversation. So I love it when everybody's like, yeah, let's sleep on. One of the things we wanted to do, not just have a panel, but kind of start this conversation and walk away with some things is a mural board. And for those of you who know how to use Mural, we'll put the link in the chat. And for those of you who don't, we're just going to shout out what you shout out, and we'll add it to it. So let me share my screen right quick, and we'll kind of put a few teasers out here and let everybody kind of weigh in, because it's and then know that at the end of this, we're going to gather all this together, all these great ideas, and send them back out to the group who's attending. So give me just a second. And there's Marlan. Let's see, let me find the right thing. All right, so let's go over here to, hold on. Lost it.
Got it for you, Dan, if you want me to share.
Yeah, would you mind? Then I'll get on there and put it. So what we've laid out here is, as we've talked about some of those things, you can hear a lot about strategic planning. And one of the challenges that we wanted to throw out today was, well, what are you doing? You think about 2022. We've had a really incredible couple of years here where it's been change after change after change, and emotional and psychological and neuroscience, all the things that are really impacting what we're doing. So what we want to talk about is, well, what are we going to do for 2022? How can it be different than where we are? The second piece of that is, Michelle and I talked a little bit about this enabling employees. So that was the ability to find that mentor, to contribute, to be a part of the group, to have that purpose. And then the last one is really this what we call entrepreneurship. This is engaging employees to really take all those great talents and that desire for something different, and that quitting to go to the gig economy. How can we take and harness that power? And so one of the things we wanted to do, if you've attended one of ours before, is think about each of these and contribute. What are we going to do for 2022? What are some of the ideas that you have that can go in your strategic plan? So let's start on the let's go backwards here a little bit and start with the entrepreneurship. We've already given you a couple of thoughts and examples of what's happening there. Anybody have some thoughts and ideas? I've here gathered their ideas on innovations or changes they want to make to the experience, including their own. What other things do you think you could do to support entrepreneurship?
Does anybody have a story to share when they've applied this?
I would think giving them power, not just letting them know, giving them, gathering their ideas, but actually giving them opportunities to experience and show their independent thought process, their independent decision-making, leading skills, really putting it into action. So showing them, providing them ways that they can show themselves to you, that they can be trusted, that they're invested in your company, that they have these great ideas.
Yeah.
Love that.
That is great, Jill. I know I had an experience where I had a pretty large organization, and when I was working in financial services, and but I had a crazy idea and put together the business plan for my leader. While the numbers made sense, I mean, it was pulling me off a large organization to go basically do this sort of startup idea. And he finally said, all right, I'll give you 6 people in 6 months. Like, you can figure it out. And if it doesn't work, I don't know if your job will still be here, but like, you can try it. And I was like, I really think this is going to work. And so we were, I was given the name of a group of people I could speak with that I didn't know. And I basically said, look, I got a high risk opportunity. This is what I need. I don't really know how we're going to make it work. I know what the end state kind of looks like. are you in or are you out? And I got 6 people to say I'm in, but we sat there and like literally put what work needed to be done in the middle of my desk. And everybody said, hey, I'll take that. I'll take that, because it really accentuated what were everyone's natural strengths. So there was no org chart, there was no hierarchy. It was this group of people who brought all of their skills together and divvied up the work. And we got it done and we proved it out, and it became an actual department and a team. And in fact, Diane, the CXPA Innovation Award that year, that was what we won for, right? So it was just the willingness to take a risk and to kind of go in and sort of throw out the rules, I think is a good way to encourage entrepreneurship. And what's interesting is, while I had done that before for many jobs, the team that I worked with hadn't. But now I've watched them, many of them have taken that sort of, okay, wait, I've done it once. I have the confidence now, and they're applying it in the work that they've done since. So I think just being able to sort of forget some of the rules and boundaries, working with your team and figure out how to collaborate and leveraging each other's strengths is a really good way to practice the behaviors of an entrepreneur.
Great example.
So I love entrepreneurship, but it's also dangerous because employees often struggle to see outside the walls of their own silo. And so they're super familiar with their own work, and they can have a great idea and they can really optimize their little world, but they end up sub-optimizing the entire end-to-end process. And so what we've done in the past to be successful is to put a training and a governance program around those kinds of activities. And so, the employee goes to the training program, they get equipped with the tools they need to be successful with the project management, analysis, problem definition, root cause analysis, that kind of stuff. And then they submit their project proposal, and the governance organization makes sure that that's aligned with the strategic vision. And then if those things check out, then they've got the approval to go move forward and run their project and innovate. But I think without kind of that structure and that governance, then you end up, somebody's got a great idea. Hey, let's, send all these emails to clients. Or a classic example, you get 10 different departments sending 10 different surveys to the same customer because everybody had a great idea. Oh, let's go do a survey. So I think that governance organization is really important.
Great point. I think you're talking about that scalability. I think that's where even things like lean innovation are a great method to apply to be able to create that structure. That's such a great point, and it is a risky area, Dave. Totally agree.
Hey, so let me ask on this topic, Michelle, a great example of a risk that you took there. Appreciate the point that was just brought up. What are you seeing in terms of reward for somebody that's willing to take this risk? Michelle, you mentioned your job might not have been there. We just mentioned the governance program. Somebody decides that they've got this great idea, they want to take the risk. What's the reward? And from a leadership perspective, how do we allow them to participate in the gains of the business if they're willing to take that risk?
Well, I know I'm seeing more companies, and even in fact, the one I work for now, just with Medallia, right? When someone is pulling off an idea that works, and even if it doesn't, recognizing it through Slack channel, calling it out during broader meetings, acknowledging that previous companies I've worked for, it got recognition. I have also seen it affect bonus and new job opportunities. So again, I think to the point earlier, it has to be celebrated and acknowledged, whether or not the attempt worked or didn't work, but at least you're all smarter. Acknowledging all of those things is critically important. So external recognition, pay, job opportunities, those would be some of the things that I think companies can do to really highlight this new behavior and new way of doing work.
It's really great.
And feeding it a little bit. One of the things that I learned early on is when we would do these cross-functional, to your point, Dave, about making sure people are, when they come to a working session or a project session, that we're talking about this end to end. But also as we begin to teach and pull the light bulbs on around how to build more extensively and teach them creative approaches to how to design, we watched for those organics, we used to call them, the people who just like the light bulbs went off for them, because it was great to have everybody learn, but those people are the ones who would stay after our project, our working session, and ask questions, and they were curious. And so we began to identify them as those naturals, which led into, this is early on, led into our experienced network leaders. We created a group of people who those were organic, who were natural at it, who were curious, who wanted to take on projects, which is what entrepreneurship is all about, to have them want to be a part of something. So, you know, why fight it? Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Some people want to come and do their work and focus on their thing and not really learn anything else. They want to become an expert in that field. That's great. Find those people who are natural at it and then provide them a platform to go do it. So that was always exciting to have one or two people at least from every session that just got it, the light bulb went on for them, and how we nurtured them in different ways.
It's that champion, right? Creating that champion at any hierarchy level, right? Everyone and anyone, if you've got passion, really highlighting them. So that's a powerful, just kind of like the CX champions, right? These have a lot of influence and power.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's good to have open innovation and invention sessions. We have them quarterly, and it really fosters that environment, right? And there's recognition that comes out of those. So in those sessions, we have patent attorneys that come and sort of inspire folks and tell them, hey, here are the guardrails, right? But we also, I think it's fantastic that quarterly we know which parts of the organization are, driving more patents, more innovation, or more new concepts. So
that's cool. That's like organized chaos, Jeff. That's awesome.
I love it. So let's move over to the next one. So how we've talked a little bit about how to identify and thinking about those types of people in the entrepreneurship, but what exactly do they need? If I think about this enabling employees, so oftentimes we hear, I don't have a platform to do anything differently, or my leader, to Michelle's point earlier, my leader doesn't give me time to go do it. There's obstacles in the way. How can we enable employees? What other ideas do you have, or what have you done that's really enabled them with either, we talked about skills, we talked about knowledge. What else?
Oh, come on. Some of y'all have something that's worked really well.
One of the steps we had is kind of a mix between kind of all three of these. So it was a small to mid-sized company. When I was in consulting, and we actually did a balanced scorecard exercise, right? So just a broader strategic planning. But the key that we had was we truly invited everybody from the analyst all the way to the CEO and put them in 3 different pods. And yes, it took a lot more time away from the organization. But it really brought every department at every level onto the same page and dreamt a vision together. Now, ultimately, we all know the executives put the vision forward, right? The one they wanted, but it really created that buy-in. And then from there, they launched that kind of entrepreneurship and ideation out of it. And so everybody was aligned on a vision on where we could go and where the possibilities can be. To Dave's point, it opened up their eyes to the broader organization, what needed to be done and their role in it. And they really just saw an explosion of great ideas that weren't just for a role or a function, but that truly went after the customer experience.
That's a great one.
So it's hard to do in a large organization. I've been trying to figure out how to do it in a larger one, but truly impactful.
When we listen to our employees, the 2 biggest obstacles tend to be time and a platform to be heard, right? So enabling means giving, for us, it means being sure to give them, even if it's 5 minutes or part of some survey or whatever, making sure that folks have time to provide their feedback. And then number two, is there a way to submit their information where they actually feel heard?
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I know even with us, right, there's a lot of that technology that allows you to, it's ideation platforms, right? So it's open, people can submit ideas, and then sort of that crowd-based voting for the organization to go, yeah, I love these ideas, I don't. And those are ways to use technology to gain visibility, recognize and acknowledge the people who are heavily involved, badge those that are more active, because they have a passion around innovation, kind of speaking to also, Diane, what you were mentioning earlier. So there's like I say, there's some really good ways that you can leverage technology to get it out of kind of the challenges with time, because those are fast ways to capture ideas and vote and see how what's happening with that idea.
I think it's a great thing to actually brainstorm around, because when Michelle was talking about the actions and behaviors, if you're looking for to talk about the obstacles that are in the way, and then convert each of those obstacles, like time and skill set, to say, what do we need to enable? That's really what we talk about with enabling, is what do they need? So we had one organization who, time, they were always in this time crunch. My leader doesn't give me time. My plate's already full. And what we began to identify was, we need to set that time aside. It's like this time right now. All of us are busy, but if we don't have a chance to stand back and really stop and think about what we're doing, we all get caught in that wheel, right? Of doing the same thing, kind of that the definition of stupid, right? Do the same thing over and over again with the same results. I think we have to think about what we're really trying to enable. If we want to give people more time, what do we need to take off their plate? Where are we being inefficient today that can really help them free up some of that time? So I think it's looking for and applying our design thinking to what those obstacles might be.
Well, and Diane, you're talking, here about how an organization can free up and help enable, right? To enable, remove the obstacles. I also think as individuals, we've got to remember we have skin in this game too. We decide how we use our time as well. And I think sometimes it's real easy for us to fall into a bit of that victim mentality of, well, they don't give me enough, or I have too much work. And taking time to carve out some individual and personal goals and practices that you have full ownership over what you do and how you spend your time, that puts some ownership on you. I know that is something that has helped me greatly in terms of, how do I make sure I am accomplishing the things that I need to, both from my job priorities as well as my personal professional development priorities.
A great idea.
I think to that too, I'll just add, one of the things that we've tried to do more of is, I think a lot of times specifically in people's roles, they try to skill up in what they already do really well, or what they think is going to get them promoted within their exact job to their manager's position, right? And to your point, it's about having that conversation and saying, hey, you've had this idea, it's more on the product management side and you're in finance. Why don't you go take a product management course, right? And we'll help you with the training, and that way you kind of start cross-functionally training people and enabling to move throughout the organization and, kind of the whole career growth part. So.
I love that. I think it's great. Great idea.
And there's so many free, right now more than ever, you have access outside of your company's offerings to pretty much any type of training or certification that you want. No time is better than now to beef up the skill sets that you are curious about and want to develop. There's no reason to not be doing those things.
And you wonder if that's when they're looking for that change. I've been doing this a long time. What else is there? This entrepreneurship. They're leaving and looking for something that they're not being fulfilled at their role. What is that? And how can you identify whether that's a skill set or a knowledge or an inclusion or an engagement? What's really driving some of that? Because I question, there's a lot of people are moving jobs, moving roles. We know they don't leave the company. They sometimes leave their manager. It's a great opportunity to learn a new skill, because there's so many companies that are moving toward the tech and digital. And those who are not moving forward and trying to keep up with this pace of change are finding their employees are like, there's happenings elsewhere. I'm going to go where it's really happening. So it's also, I think, making sure in recruiting that you are defining what you want from people who are coming in, because while people are leaving, lots of us have people coming to our organizations. What are we doing differently for them? How are we talking about the organization differently, and helping them to understand if they come to the to this company, what are they gonna be able to achieve? So I think it's
And
also purposeful.
You know
and what
what?
I find also is that it's interesting. People do want to grow. They want to go in different areas. And I forgot who it was that just said that about cross-functional training, and Stephen. Yeah. But I believe that part of the problem is in the onboarding process, and that the new hires are not being shown and explained that they have the opportunity to grow within their company. And statistically, they're showing that 62% of people leave when they don't feel like they're being trained and invested in. And if they, instead of going to another company to get that, you may actually be able to provide that in your own company, but there's a lack of communication. The expectation, I call it expectation management. There's a gap there where they're not being explained very clearly from the get-go, so that as they're doing their job and whatever their work is, that they're already having a more expansive vantage point about how they're approaching their work, and actually recognizing that I have a place to go within this company. I can actually grow here, and they prefer that than starting over, but it's not being shown to them.
Yep. Jill, it's fascinating because you're so right. And how much of this goes back to communication, right? How much of this is going back to having these conversations, and even as a leader, recognizing the responsibility that you can have to communicate, set expectations, the power of storytelling for people to learn and feel comfortable through you, and what are your behaviors, right? So even just building off of Jill's example, right, as a manager, as a leader, are you talking about your goals? Are you sharing that with the people around you? Are you speaking to the steps you're taking? You know, everything from how you're managing stress to make that not a stigma anymore, how you're managing stress, how you take care of yourself, how you're investing in your career goals, how you invest in your people, how you learn new skills. That's a very powerful position that you can sit in and really build strong, deep relationships with your people, that opens up the dialogue for them to share what's going on with them. And again, driving back to that point of an individual feeling valued, listened to, like someone's in their corner that's going to help them be successful. And that can happen, again, beyond waiting for the organization or company to give you the playbook.
That's a great lead in, Michelle, to our last segment of strategic planning. So always, as you know, with these events, we love to challenge. So what are you going to, we've had a great discussion. There's some awesome things in chat. If you guys haven't seen that, we'll be sure and share that. But, you know, what's the story you want to tell at the end of 2022? What are the things that you're going to be doing differently? I mean, everybody's in the planning stage right now for next year, whether they're trying to get budget or just thinking about what's that new year going to bring? What have we learned over this year? What's next? So I'm challenging everyone. Let's talk a little bit about what is going in your plan. If it's something you heard today or something that's already in your plan that you want to share with the group. So I'll start. I have one organization who is focused on the build of their, how would I describe this? Their skill set, but the skill set is more about active listening. So what they feel like is there's a lot of communication happening, but the employees don't feel heard, customers don't feel heard. So they are putting something in place. And as we build this curriculum, it's been super interesting to hear how we hear a lot, and there's a lot of noise out there right now, but this ability for us to really focus. So I myself am going to put that into my, how do I do that and build that in my own company to be a more active listener. So I'm going to throw the first one out. Somebody else.
Hey, Dee, I'll dovetail on that. had the opportunity to sit on one of TM Forum's digital panels. And there was a whole section from the top carriers in the telco space around the transformation of HR's role in helping the employees experience. And part of what they talked about was HR getting closer to their IT constituents to use technology, similar to your point around listening, but taking it from the approach of using technology, some of the same technology that we use to listen and predict what would help our customers, to use that technology to predict and watch workflows for our employees, to come to them and suggest, hey, you're doing a great job at this. How would you feel if we took that off your plate and allowed you to do something else, or allowed you to have more free time? It's a delicate balance between just taking that away, because the perception of some of those automation technologies it's to get rid of bodies. It's not. It's to help our employees stay human, right? The work-life balance that we talked about. So for me, I'm looking for technologies, practitioner and technologist. I'm looking for technologies and application of that technology to help listen and predictively show empathy to the employee, right? Suggest things that may give them more time back.
It's a great one. It's awesome. Who else?
So it looks like Melissa made a comment about wanting to create more cross-functional CX champions for the new year. Melissa, you want to speak to that at all? A little bit about what you're thinking?
Sure. I'm new to the CX role, but I've worked in this industry. We're in the scientific industry, so biotech, with customers, frontline customers for over 10 years. So yeah, one of my first goals is to, work with internal teams to figure out how we can funnel out what CX is throughout the organization. Yeah, so CX Champions is on our list for 2022. We're also looking to implement things like, postcards from the field so that we can, like we were talking about before, get input from the frontline employees into our internal teams and get their voices heard, because they are the ones that are, of course, talking to the customers, and they feel isolated from any of the decisions being made, at the beginning of the process.
Isn't that ironic that the people who know the most about customers are out on an island?
Yes.
And I think Michelle talked about this a little earlier. It was always, we joke that it's always the first place we go when we're talking to any organization. We go and talk to that front line. What's happening? What are customers really saying? It's great to go to marketing and sales, but where we're finding, especially with all the retention numbers that organizations have, where are we losing people? And what are some of the things that, not just employees, but losing customers as well? What are some of those things that are driving it? So you can have a work session all day long, but if you're not talking to the people who really know what's happening, it's difficult. So I love that. Love that you're bringing them in.
And I think, Melissa, too, to add on, just because I know this, what you mentioned here is something I think probably a lot of others are also looking to do, right? Getting that cross-functional buy-in. I know the better you're able to connect that action, so developing the leaders and champions to an overall corporate strategic KPI, and then backing into then what are the behaviors, what's the why, how, that will help gain buy-in as well. Because I know in my experience, I think as, again, a CX practitioner and speaking to my peer group as practitioners, a lot of times I would have a whole lot of activities we were doing, but CX was so ambiguous and squishy for the executive team and the leadership team that they're like, okay, great, keep doing that. That's good because it says CX. And not really understanding the magnitude of impact and power it can have on delivering the corporate goals. So as you talk about it, and I just, again, say this, I'm just using yours as an example, but as you talk about it, always starting with the key strategic objective and how it's tying to that and why it's important will help you gain more buy-in and success.
Yeah, there's another company, Michelle, doing that for every individual. So by breaking that down and saying, what are we doing that's really threatening to somehow threatening to that outcome, having every employee in every role understand what they're doing that's contributing to that. So a lot of times back office, for example, talk to somebody in finance or AP, and they say, I feel like I don't have any control or impact on the experience. It's like, you do. You design the bill. You talk to people all the time about really sticky situations that are emotionally charged. That's important. And that in your ability to do that and move this needle, and then that creates this. So helping them to really thread to that, I think, is one of the other really important things.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, but also how you individually are contributing to that. Great ideas.
And even converting it to the language that they speak, right? It may not be customer experience, it may be financial or business metrics. So instead of trying to educate, sometimes it's easier to translate your terminology to their business terminology versus training them to understand the CX terminology in the beginning. Eventually, you'll get there. But sometimes it's easier to help them bridge if you just translate everything into the business KPIs.
Got a couple of people have their hands raised. Go ahead.
Sure. When I think about 2022, and I think Michelle, you mentioned, hey, let's be sure we're in line with the bigger picture goals, right? We saw in 2021 huge acceleration with digital trial and adoption, right? And I think a lot of folks are in this mindset of, hey, let's keep that momentum. And I'm sort of the small voice, I feel like, often saying, it's not momentum. This is the perfect time to really talk about intentional experience design. When we think about next year, the expectations are for clients, they're still rapidly changing, right? And so when we think, oh, people try digital, they're going to do it, and how do we get more people into it? I think that's a huge risk to think that that's just going to continue if we continue to do the things we have doing. What we've done to get here is not necessarily going to be what we need to do to get to the next level, because so much is changing. And so this, in my opinion, is the perfect opportunity to go to your board, your stakeholders, whomever, and say, hey, if you want to keep this going, we need to invest in intentional experience design and be sure that we're understanding what's happening next and addressing that and moving forward in that direction, because it's not just going to happen on its own. The environment's just changing too rapidly.
Yeah.
And it's not going to slow down at any point in time. I keep seeing all these new technologies pop up, and that continually raising of expectations, to your point, it's just really fueled our fire, as CX professionals. Yeah. Thanks for that. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Speed of change is like whiplash. Thanks, Jill. That's right. I love that comment. I love that comment. Marlon,
looks like Anastasia's got a comment there.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe some hope of there, because I am just ecstatic to see so many executives joining this now. Like we're seeing it, and I'm teaching executives at the business school. So many executives are now understanding that the CX is not just a part of customer experience department or frontline or sales or marketing. And it's different. We work with different countries, from the US to Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And it's just, to me, that gives so much hope that executives are joining the tribe now. And I think, like, for you guys who do not have that in your strategic planning for 2022, like you need that's the best thing you can do for your company. Like, really do whatever you need. And Michelle said it, executives, and somebody else said, use whatever language you need, but get them, right? Like, get them, because you can do so much stuff in terms of your department in CX, but you all know, if you don't have the buy-in, or the real buy-in, or not even the buy-in, the belief from the executives, it's not going to go anywhere. And it's such a drag to see when companies fail just because of none of the executives being actually interested in it, like genuinely interested. So if you don't have that, gosh, like, plan it.
I think it's being purposeful about that, Anastasia.
Yeah.
Greg Tucker and I,
Exactly.
we coined that CX speak to C-suite speak, because you have to talk their language, what they care about, retention, all the things they care about. If we're over here talking about net promoter score and we're talking about the voice of customer, all that's great. But I think what they're looking for is, how can you help me with these things? How are you showing me, show me the money, but also show me how it's impacting my organization, how we're upskilling. I talk a lot about the education that my company does, to build skills in organizations. And we talk about the impact of upskilling and keeping people, attracting new people. So we're trying to really make sure that comes across in a different way, rather than just being, we're after a net promoter score. Nothing wrong with net promoter score, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more we do. And I think we got to break that paradigm a little bit.
Well, I think recognizing, Diane, right, our CX metrics are what I call enabler metrics, right? They're enabling the business to be successful. That's the path to do it. It's not, those aren't the top line metrics. Right. That's exactly right. And I think a lot of us as CX professionals, we sort of forgot its place because we kind of cared so much about what that number was around NPS or CSAT, that we sort of lost sight of the why and how to use it. So yeah, focus on, at the end of the day, it's about making the business successful. And you do that through delivering great employee and customer experiences. And that's the connection.
Well, great discussion. If you guys aren't noticing, every time we get together, the group gets bigger. And that is so exciting to see the local community growing. Everybody cares. We're all chasing similar problems, even though we're selling or practicing with different customers. So thank you for being here with us today. Diane, Michelle, thank you for your leadership in the discussion. The panel will be sent out, notes will be sent out. So if you were interested in the whiteboard experiment that we did, or exercise that we did, we'll make sure that you get a copy of that so that you can keep that as a reference. But with that, look out for the notification of our next event to come. Look forward to the discussion then. But we hope you have a great Friday, a great week, and keep practicing out in the field. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Happy week.
Thank you.